I didn't wake up that morning thinking my life was about to split cleanly into a before and an after. It was just another double shift, another night tying my apron too tight and telling myself it was temporary, another reminder that life doesn't always care how smart you are or how hard you worked to get somewhere. But then again, that's how it usually happens, right? The moments that change everything don't announce themselves. They slip in quietly wearing a bad mood and an expensive suit. It started with a laugh, not a friendly one, the kind that cuts sideways. I was setting down a bottle of wine at a corner table in the dining room of Alderwick, this old-money restaurant where the lighting is soft and the prices are sharp. The man at the table leaned back in his chair, glanced at me like I was part of the furniture, and said something in French. I wasn't supposed to understand it. He assumed that. People like him always do. He called me a monkey. Said I should be serving fruit, not wine. Then he flicked his wrist and tipped his glass just enough for red wine to crawl across the table and spill onto my sleeve. He switched to English, then loud theatrical. "Clean it up." Like he was testing how small he could make me feel in front of a room full of strangers. And, for a second, I felt it. That familiar heat in my chest. That old instinct to apologize even when you've done nothing wrong. You know what I mean? That reflex you build when the world keeps telling you to stay quiet. But I didn't move. I just stood there, wine dripping onto the floor, and looked at him. I thought about my rent, my mother's medical bills, the degree collecting dust in a drawer at home. And then I smiled. Not the polite service smile. A real one. I answered him in French. Clean, precise, the kind you learn when you've spent years arguing with professors who don't let anything slide. I told him his vocabulary was outdated and his manners were worse. I asked him if he'd ever been so confident someone couldn't understand him that he forgot how exposed that made him. The table went silent. His glass froze halfway to his mouth. One of his friends dropped a fork. I could feel the room tilt like everyone had just realized they were watching something they hadn't paid for. He stuttered, tried to laugh it off, said I was just a server. That word. Just. I told him. Still smiling that comparing people to animals stopped being fashionable sometime in the 19th century, and maybe he should keep up. His friends stared at me like I'd just pulled a rabbit out of thin air. That's when the chef came out. Tall, serious eyes that miss nothing. He asked me in Italian where I learned to speak like that. I answered without thinking. University. Before life got complicated. The words slipped out heavier than I expected. He didn't send me away. He stayed. And suddenly it wasn't just French. It was Italian. Then Spanish. Then Mandarin. Each language felt like opening a window in a room that had been sealed for years. The man who'd insulted me kept saying it was impossible, that I was faking it, that someone like me couldn't possibly be more than what he saw standing in front of him. I told him most people don't expect waitresses to speak 6 languages, just like most CEOs don't expect to be corrected on their grammar in public. A couple of people laughed. Not at me, at him. That should have been the end of it. A sharp moment, a story people would tell later over drinks. But life wasn't done pushing yet. A woman stood up from another table. She introduced herself as a food critic, one of the kind people in this industry actually fear. She said she'd been watching the whole thing, asked my name, asked where I studied. When I said I'd been in a doctoral program before I left, her expression changed. Not pity, recognition. Before anyone could process that, another table erupted. A large family speaking rapid Italian, clearly upset. The restaurant's translator was out sick. Servers were panicking. Management looked like they were calculating losses in their heads. I didn't wait to be asked. I walked over and spoke to them. Not formal Italian. Regional. The kind that carries memory. The older man at the head of the table grabbed my hand and started explaining, voice shaking. The dish wasn't wrong. It just wasn't right. It wasn't how his mother made it. It wasn't how his wife remembered it. This dinner wasn't about food. It was about honoring something they were afraid was slipping away. I translated everything to the kitchen. Not just ingredients, but meaning, timing, respect. And when the corrected dish came out, the man stood up and clapped. Slowly at first. Then his whole table joined in. Then somehow the rest of the room followed. The chef watched all of it like someone seeing a problem he'd never known how to name finally solve itself. The man who'd insulted me earlier didn't clap. He demanded a manager, threatened to pull his business, said this whole thing was unprofessional, and here's where it got complicated. Because money talks, and fear listens. I could feel the room tightening again. I'd seen this shift before. The moment where people decide peace is more valuable than fairness, where survival trumps truth, and for a second I almost stepped back, almost apologized, almost disappeared again. But then the chef spoke. He said he'd never seen hospitality like that, not in decades. He offered me a position on the spot, a real one, something new, something built around what I'd just done naturally. He said he'd help me finish my degree. The insulted man lost his temper. His business partners didn't. They watched him unravel, then quietly told him they were done, that they wouldn't be associated with someone who couldn't see value standing right in front of him. Before anyone could breathe, another woman walked in. Sharp suit, observant eyes. She spoke only French. Everyone recognized her too late. A restaurant inspector, the kind that can end careers. She sat in my section. I handled her table, carefully, thoughtfully. Allergies, pairings, philosophy. She asked hard questions, the kind designed to expose cracks. I answered honestly. About food, about culture, about why serving someone well means understanding where they come from, not just what they order. The man who'd started all of this tried to interrupt, tried to discredit me. She shut him down with a look that could freeze glass. At the end of the night, she announced her recommendation, not just to keep the restaurant's rating, but to use it as a model, for something new, something better. I went home that night exhausted in a way sleep doesn't fix. My apron still smelled like wine. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. And for the first time in years, I let myself believe the version of me I'd buried under responsibility wasn't gone. Just waiting. 6 months later, I stood on a stage speaking to a room full of executives. Same voice, different posture. I told them I wasn't special. I was just seen, and that changed everything. So here's where I leave it with you, because this isn't a clean ending. It's a question. How many people do you walk past every day assuming you know their story? How many times have you confused someone's job with their worth? Tell me in the comments. Was the man wrong? Was the room right to turn on him? Or should I have stayed quiet and protected the peace? Share your thoughts, share your own stories, and if this hit something real for you, pass it on. Because the most dangerous thing in the world isn't ignorance. It's certainty without curiosity.